Good morning, Rowan University, and welcome to the Parliament Nest. As always, I'm your host, Charles Howell, and today we have a very important show for you all. A topic that has hit and affected everyone here at Rowan University, students here, one way or another. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the recent housing epidemic. We were fortunate enough to have the two best knowledgeable people on this subject who handle the university housing business to answer all of your questions. They are Travis Douglas, the Director of the Residential Learning and University Housing Department, and Dean Richard Jones, the Dean of Students and the Overseer of the Res Life offices. But before we start answering your questions, let's first give you a little background on what exactly has been occurring. Now, as you all know, this university has what is called a waitlist, and the waitlist is where you as a student go if you don't make it onto our lottery for campus housing. And as opposed to last year, the waitlist has increased to a whopping 600 plus students. Last year, the waitlist was 70 plus. Now, once again, I'm joined here by Travis Douglas, Director of Res Life, and Dean Richard Jones, Dean of Students. I thank you both gentlemen for joining us. How are you both today?
Good, Charles.
Good?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Doing well? Okay. Sorry I couldn't offer any water or anything like that. So now, as you both know, I work for Res Life, and I'm working behind the scenes with Res Life with all the frontline duties, so I know firsthand where the Res Life job is coming from and how important the job is to the growth here at Rowan University. And as you both know, with the recent housing epidemic, there have been many angry faces in your offices, no doubt. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I don't know that I would say there's many angry faces.
Many angry faces?
I think that there were some angry faces. I think that when you have a housing system of about 3,900 students, and the majority of those students actually do get housing, I believe that those students were actually pretty happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's get started then. Now, as I mentioned earlier about the wait list, what does the wait list mean for a student who ends up on it, and how does the wait list work?
Mm-hmm. Well, Charles, so we every year we have students who apply for housing. Their interest is in living on campus in a future year, and we typically have more students who apply for housing than available bed spaces in our system.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's really where the lottery comes into play. It's like a lottery, just like a drawing. The students who've applied are put together in the lottery process, and we determine who is eligible for housing and who has to stay on the wait list based on the results of the lottery. The wait list really just means that at that time and that point in time, we don't have enough spaces to give them a specific assigned bed space, so we have to wait until something opens up to offer them.
Yes. About how long usually do you feel like students would have to wait?
Well, you know what, before you actually answer that question, I think it's also important to give some historical overview of the wait list over the past couple of years. In your introduction, you mentioned that last year's wait list was around 72 students. Well, the year before that, it was around 300 students.
Really?
And, right. And the year before that, typically it averages around 300 students. And what really determines the number of students that will be on the wait list is that particular first year class. So this year, we had a pretty large first year class. This year that the waiting list actually rose to 600. We had a pretty large freshman class that came in that year. And so in order to accommodate them, less space was offered to upper class students.
Absolutely.
So that has actually impacted the fact that that the wait list was unusually large.
Okay. So you make it known to every student who applies for waitlist that they aren't guaranteed housing when they sign their contracts, and that they could possibly be put on the wait list, right?
Yeah, students who come to Rowan know that we have a policy here for freshmen and sophomores that says that freshmen and sophomores will live on campus during those 2 years. We really do that because we know that students who are new to the university and transitioning in, often younger students, they need more support services and they really benefit from the opportunity to be on campus. And so with that comes the guarantee that for their first 2 years they're going to have university housing. But we also talk with students about that necessarily means that you're not guaranteed housing for juniors and seniors. We talk about that in our literature, on our website. We explain it at orientation, so when students are brand new and coming to the university with their parents, they hear us talk about the fact that they need to plan ahead for a few years off into the future, that they will go through a lottery and they may or may not be guaranteed housing in their junior and senior year.
Absolutely. And I do see students that actually do understand that, and they do plan ahead for their sophomore year. I moved off campus during my sophomore year, right before I turned 21. I remember meeting with the people in your offices, and they got me set up with canceling my housing contract, and now I live off campus, and I will continue to do so for the rest of my time here at Rowan. And how does residential learning and university housing plan to house all these students for a larger population on campus?
Well, we approach that in a variety of ways, and so what we do is we may offer, the first year students triples, and then we take a look at the spaces that we have assigned to upper class students, and we look at our total design capacity, and then we walk through each one of the residence halls that we are considering to use for triples for the first year class, and then we make the appropriate decisions whether or not the room is actually large enough to accommodate triples. And so that's a part of the process. We also look at proximity. How close are you to the university? For example, a student that's coming from North Jersey would have priority for a student who may live in Pittman or Williamstown.
Absolutely.
Because the distance to travel is greater, as opposed to a student who's coming from California,
yes,
who may have precedence over a student in North Jersey.
Absolutely. So you mentioned with before proximity, tripling. Could you tell me where you plan on tripling for next year?
So we typically triple in our traditional freshman residence halls. That's something we've done for years, and students have become pretty familiar with that practice, I think.
The majority of them? The majority of the freshman residence halls?
Well, all of our freshman residence halls have some percentage of the rooms that are tripled.
Oh, okay.
The way Dean Jones described, we go through and we walk through every single space to make sure that we understand, how is the space laid out, how much room is in there, are there any funny things going on with, say, things like fire sprinklers or things like that
yes,
might make it so that it's not a practical room for us to triple. And we try to then use that information to choose the rooms that are best suited to accommodate the 3 students and the furniture, those kinds of things. So there are freshman triples in all of our traditional freshman residence halls. This year, something that was new that was offered to students was the option to triple rooms in Edgewood Park Apartments. That was something for upperclassmen. It was one of the strategies that we used to try to help students who were on the wait list find an option for on-campus housing. We saw about 24 groups of students that actually picked rooms in Edgewood that they would want to have configured as a triple room.
Oh, okay. I had no idea about that. You made it optional?
Well, it was something that was available for them to select. So during room selection, students get to go online.
Yes.
They see what rooms are available, and they can actually see on the screen how many bed spaces are available in a particular bedroom. And we saw 24 sets of students that picked rooms in Edgewood that were rooms for 3 people together.
And this way, it is very possible for people to choose groups that they want to be in, people that they're related to, and people that they obviously get along with, right?
Sure.
Makes it very convenient.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that we realize is that students spend the majority of their time actually outside of the classroom, in their residence halls, out and about on campus. And one of the things that we would like to encourage is that the outside experience actually supports what goes on in the classroom, and the environment in which students live is conducive to learning and education. And so that's our goal. And so and so what we do is we try to offer students the opportunity that if you know someone and you would like to live with that person, we try to arrange that based on particular criteria that we set forth, like agreement, living styles and things like that, in order to, make the living process a little easier for students too.
Absolutely.
And I will say this, that we were actually pretty encouraged by the fact that we had about 600 students on the wait list, because I think that says that we actually are doing some really good things in residential learning and university housing, that so many students actually want to live on campus, as opposed to being relieved that they got on the wait list so
Yes.
that they can escape into the neighborhood. So we were actually encouraged by that. And, we would love to have every student first year to their senior year live on campus, but our facilities just don't accommodate that right now.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Rowan University, it is time for our first break. We will get right back to you after these messages.
The intramural sports program at Rowan University is a fun and accessible way for students to get into the athletic spirit. The program allows students to choose from a variety of different sports and various levels of competitiveness, including flag football, soccer, and street hockey, as well as basketball, volleyball, and ping pong. There's something for everyone who wants to get involved. In addition to being fun, the sports program at Rowan encourages healthy physical activity and student interactions. So come get involved with the sports program at Rowan. We promise you won't regret it. Rowan University. Expect more. Achieve more.
Okay, Rowan University, welcome back to the Parliament Nest. Once again, I'm your host, Charles Howell. Just a little recap on what we've been talking about so far. Joined here by Travis Douglas and Dean Jones, Dean of Students. And we were discussing accommodations for residential learning housing and how the whole waitlist and room selection process works. Now, since we were talking previously about the waitlist as when it was 600 plus at the beginning of the housing process, is there any chance that the university will be able to house all 600 plus people?
Yeah, I think at this point we can say pretty confidently that the students that were on that wait list at that time are all going to be housed. We've gotten the wait list from that original number, which is in the low 600s, down now to just above 70 students.
That's amazing.
So we feel pretty comfortable that going into the summer, as spaces become available, we'll be able to offer all of them housing, those of them who continue to want university housing. And then we continue to take applications throughout the summer. We get new transfer students and other students that will apply, and we work with them over the course of the summer to add them into spaces as they become available as well.
And and one of the things too that we realize that where a student lives is really important to that student.
Absolutely.
And that situation causes a lot of angst and anxiety regarding whether or not the student is going to get housing and whether or not they're going to get to the opportunity to live with their friends as well. And so what we do is once we generate the list, we work that list daily to make sure that we can offer a space to a student as soon as one becomes available, so that they can so that the angst that they experience is relieved, and then they can focus on what's really important. And what's really important is what happens in that classroom, their grades, the ability to study without thinking about where I'm going to live the next semester.
Yeah.
And so our office, his office, they mine the list every day to make sure that we're able to assign students as soon as a space becomes available.
Or even being distracted in class where in the back of their head, they should be paying attention to what's going on in class,
Sure.
but in the back of their head, they're like, man, I really don't want to go back to my room, don't like my roommate.
Right.
Because when I transferred here, I didn't have the option of choosing my roommate. I went into Evergreen Hall with another roommate, and things don't always go so well. Don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but eventually I ended up moving into a different room by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's an opportunity for learning as well. One of the things that we talk to students about is the fact that living on campus is sort of a microcosm of the entire world.
Yes.
And you're learning valuable skills that will take you into the rest of your life. And one of the things that students have to learn, and it's something that we've all learned, is how to get along with people that don't necessarily agree with us,
Yes.
And so we will experience those conflicts in a variety of settings, in housing, in the workplace, in social spaces. We will always experience people that we may not agree with, and so one of the things that, sometimes, being paired with someone that you don't know is learning the skill to resolve conflict
Absolutely.
in a mutually beneficial way.
Instead of just taking out the sock and boppers. And
Exactly.
duping them out.
Or just, deciding that, you know what, I'm going to get a room
Yes.
change, and I'm not going to learn how to live with someone who I may not necessarily agree with. And quite honestly, not only is it going to be in industry or in social gatherings, you may choose to marry someone or partner with someone that you may not exactly agree with, and
Oh,
you'll
yes.
share space with that person. And you might not necessarily want to get a divorce because they squeeze the toothpaste at the bottom of the roll as opposed to the top. So, and those are really valuable skills that you take with you, and you get those skills by living in the residence halls with different people.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what has your offices done for those students whose futures solely depend here on getting campus housing? Those students who live too far, or whatever story they came to you when they found out that they were waitlist, and they sat down and actually talked with people in your offices and had a heart-to-heart as to why they really need housing. Did you deal with any students like that?
Sure. Well, I think that the most important thing that along those lines is that, as Dean Jones mentioned, we've been working every day to try to make sure that we listen to their concerns. We take into account the specifics of their situation. How far are they from campus? What are their circumstances? And prioritize the students on the wait list to get them off the wait list and assigned into housing. And with the wait list being brought down from that high of over 600 students to 70 students, really that is an important response to those kinds of concerns, is to try to really make sure that those students who really needed it are going to get university housing.
Yes. Okay. Well, I remember that when the wait list first went out and it was causing a bit of a ruckus, landlords, including my own landlord, who owns about 16 to 17 houses here in Glassboro and some in different cities, people were calling the landlords like crazy, asking to lease their houses. And my landlord actually, after about 3 weeks into it, she sold all of her houses to students who felt like they weren't going to be pushed ahead on the wait list, which is kind of crazy. I mean, 16, 17 houses in Glassboro just selling like that, just like hotcakes.
Yeah, well, I think that one of the things, like we said, that deciding where you're going to live creates a lot of angst. And what we really try to do is manage those expectations, and we try to give students as much information so that they can make an informed decision, and we try to encourage those students to work with us and listen to the administrators who have the specific responsibility of meeting those needs. One of the things that we try to do in our office is manage students' expectations. We don't give students any sort of false hope. We try to give students the appropriate information so that they can make an informed decision. And when you're so concerned about your living arrangements, sometimes the information that you hear, doesn't always match up with what you feel.
Exactly.
And so that you may make a decision, to kind of move forward in a direction that makes you feel comfortable. But once again, here we are. The semester's not even completed yet, and the wait list is now reduced to 72 students.
Yeah, 2 weeks left.
Right, and through attrition, we are confident that we'll be able to offer those students a space, because once again, students leave the university for a variety of reasons.
Yes.
Some students may decide financially they can't afford it, and so they may need to work for a period of time. Some students may have to go to a community college and maybe do an academic reboot, and kind of adjust academically. Some students may run afoul of our student conduct code, and may be separated from the university, because they just can't, abide by the rules.
Yes.
And that creates spaces too, or their families may move away. So there are a variety of reasons why students may leave. And when those students leave, then there's an opportunity for us to place students on the wait list into their spaces too.
Absolutely.
So.
Now, one thing we haven't talked about yet is the student protests that happened right after the waitlist decision went up. Now, I have to ask you, Was the protest a shock to you, and what did your offices do, and how did they handle the protest?
Well, I think that the protest, in one sense, I understood where students were coming from, that, getting housing and being able to secure that it really is important to students. And we do know that there's a certain amount of anxiety that comes from finding out that you're not guaranteed something that is that important to you. But I think at the same time, what troubled me a little bit about some of what was happening around that time was that students, I think, were getting a lot of information that may have been misinformation or uninformed kinds of information. And that may have actually heightened anxieties into a place that was really not necessary. Mm-hmm. I think we tried to be really upfront with students and really clear about students about our track record, which has been very good for years, year after year. We've had wait lists, and we've been able to work with students and get them housed. And we tried to communicate that really clearly this year too, so that they would understand that they need to be patient with us, but that it wasn't necessarily the kind of crisis that some students may have said that it was. And I think that the results that we're seeing now kind of bear that out, that we're experienced with this, we kind of know what we're doing, and we were upfront and honest with students that if you're patient with us, we're going to be able to work with you. Here we are only a month later, and we're in a position to say that we were able to keep those commitments to students.
And I'm pretty sure those students who were running the protest have housing now, so it worked out.
Some of them didn't even want university housing. It was more just
I can imagine
something that they felt was an important issue for them, I think. So,
and so, but also let's be very clear. What we also appreciate is the fact that students are learning to use their voice.
Yes.
But with that voice comes responsibility, and that voice has power, and I think it's almost like superhero training. Once you realize that you have a certain power, a certain gift, then you have to be trained to either use that power for good, or it could be, the converse could happen. You can, use it for someone's ultimate destruction, and so we appreciate the fact that students are exercising their voice, and we need to hear the voice, but there also needs to be mutual exchange of ideas, collaboration, information, so that we can facilitate the process for all students involved, so that all students feel heard, they feel appreciated, they feel respected, and that they also trust that we know exactly what we're doing and that we have their best interest at heart.
Speaking words of wisdom. Now, Rowan University, we will get right back to you after this short break.
Are you a Rowan student and find yourself with nothing to do Thursday through Saturday from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m.? Well, head over to Rowan After Hours. Late night weekend fun, the way students actually want. Rowan After Hours jam-packs high-quality entertainment, diverse programs, and activities with something for everyone. Game tournaments, concerts, interactive activities, midnight food bars, and much more all takes place at the Student Center from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. Thursday through Saturday at Rowan University. Expect more, achieve more.
Welcome back, Rowan University. I'm your host, Charles Howell, and this is the Parliament Nest. Now, let's get right back into the questions, if you don't mind. Rowan's plans for the future when it comes to housing. Do you plan on building any more residence halls?
Yeah, we are working on the planning process for that. The university expects to continue growing somewhat into the future. Dr. Hushman has articulated a vision for that, a plan for a university, and in response to that, we're looking at developing newer freshman housing. We're still in the early phases of that process, but looking to develop a project that would be over on the area where the Mansion Park Apartments used to be.
Yes.
It's now, often people now call it Lot X. It's kind of a gravel parking lot now. But that
do you know what that's going to be?
Like I said, it's still sort of in the early planning processes, but the idea is for a freshman village that would be residence hall style housing, really built purposely for freshmen with the kinds of amenities and facilities that they need to be successful in that first year at the university. The size is still kind of to be determined, I would say.
Okay. Now, do you both feel like there will be another epidemic, meaning another protest in your offices in future years when and if the wait list increases to a number this large again?
Well, I mean, I would say that I think hopefully students have learned a little bit from the process that they saw this year, that these things are normal. They're a part of the way this works. There will be a wait list. There's a wait list every year. And I think if students kind of reflect on the experience that we had this year, that we had a wait list, but the housing office said they're going to work with us, and they did that. They met those commitments. That hopefully there will be a little bit more of a realistic outlook on what the wait list means, and more of an ability for students to be patient with that process and kind of listen to what we're telling them about the process and how it works. I would think that a protest might not necessarily be necessary now that they kind of see that the results bear out that there is a way to get to your ultimate goal, which is to get university housing, and we're going to be able to do that for them.
And and I would also include the fact that one of the things so our president talks about 4 pillars, and one of those pillars that the president talks about is access, right? And what access means is giving students an opportunity to get an education. And one of the things that we do know about education is that it's transformational and that it can be a life-changing experience if it's done correctly. And so we want to provide as many students the opportunity to get an education as we possibly can, and so that's why we are experiencing such tremendous growth, in addition to the fact that, we now have 2 medical schools, we're a research institution. All of those things attract attention to Rowan. All of those things give value to your degree as well, and with all of these exciting things that are happening at Rowan, students want to come to Rowan, and the opportunity to provide them with the opportunity to get an education is something that is personal to our president. It's personal to me, and I also believe that it's personal to Mr. Douglas. And I would also add that waitlist is not something that is particularly uncommon in the nation.
Yes, absolutely.
Some universities right in the state of New Jersey had wait lists larger than ours. It is, students understand the benefit of living on campus. I believe we do an exceptional job of providing, spaces for students and activities on campus, as some of your commercials have illustrated. And students want to live on campus. And so once again, it's not uncommon that, universities, have wait lists. But when students work with the administration and staff, as opposed to, being ruled by fear, then resolution occurs.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I do remember an email was sent out from the Office of the President that he will be having very soon an assembly on campus to discuss the future growth for Rowan University to all the students. And I believe in the email it was mentioned that by the year 2025, the on-campus 2023, the on-campus population will be 23,000 students? Is that correct?
Not the on-campus. That
the entire student body as a whole.
The entire
Okay, I was about to say.
and that will consist of our 2 medical schools and our online offerings as well.
Okay.
But we are also committed to maintaining, right, our core value, which is a residential education, right? And not moving to classrooms, larger than, 35 students. But our core commitment will be to our residential population on campus.
Okay, very insightful, gentlemen. Well, Rowan University, there you have it. I hope all of your questions were answered in light of whether or not you got housing, you're living off campus, or you even had to transfer, unfortunately. We here at Rowan University do care about your futures, and we prefer for you to stay with us the entire time. You heard it from their very mouths, Rowan University, and their work is for the future and expansion of the school into something we can be even more proud of in the future. Good night and good luck, Rowan University.